Good afternoon, everyone, and we welcome you to the second edition of the Live Chats, Emerging Africa Live Chat series, themed COVID-Proof Your Business Model. Please permit me to briefly introduce the organizer of the series, Emerging Africa Capital Group. The Emerging Africa Capital Group is an African-based provider of financial services. The group provides integrated investment banking services, including financial advisory in capital markets, trusts, asset management, as well as wealth management services. My name is Damola Olatunji. I work as a legal and trust advisor with the Emerging Africa Capital Group. I'll be your moderator for what we anticipate to be an engaging and enlightening session today. It's just going to take an hour, and we believe that this session would be very, very enlightening. Please stay tuned. Without further ado, I will go ahead to share the screen and introduce our speakers for today. Our first speaker today, Mrs. Toyin Folashade Sonny, is the Group CEO of Emerging Africa Capital Group. She has over 30 years experience in finance, capital markets, law, and investor services, and has played leading roles in major funding transactions. She's an astute business leader. Toyin Sonny was declared CEO of the Year in Nigeria, as well as All of Africa at the All Africa Businesswoman of the Year, both in 2017. Amongst several other accomplishments. Good afternoon, TFS. Your mic is
so much. Yeah, I just saw that. Thank you so much, Damola, and thank you for that excellent introduction. It's a real pleasure to be here this afternoon. I want to welcome all our participants and say thank you for joining us. And I assure you that this will be 1 hour that is very, very well invested. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ma. We look forward to your insights, your wealth of insights during this session. I'll go ahead to introduce the second speaker for today. Ogochukwu Odum is the team lead and deal execution for investment banking at Emerging Africa Capital Group. Ogochukwu has several years of experience in finance, capital markets, legal, company secretarial, and compliance. He has advised corporates and state governments on a number of funding transactions, such as bonds, commercial papers, corporate restructuring, private bonds, bridge finance, amongst others. I'm next. Good afternoon, Ogochukwu.
Good afternoon, Damola. Thank you so much for the kind introduction. It's a great privilege for me to be here today, and I'm excited to be speaking with a veteran in capital markets and finance, Mrs. Toyin Sonny. Thank you very much for the privilege. I welcome everyone here, all the participants. Thank you for registering. Thank you for joining this session. We hope that you will take a few points here and you will implement those points to make your business better. Thank you very much once again, Damola.
Thank you very much, Ogochukwu. We look forward to your enlightening presentation. Thank you very much. I'm next in line to be introduced. You already know me, Damola Olatunji, Legal and Trust Advisor. Without further ado, I think we should go straight to the theme for today, the topic for today, COVID-proofing your business model. In the wake of the pandemic, the COVID-19 pandemic, many of our businesses have suffered. We all have many have sleepless nights, wondering, how the cash flows would continue to flow in to sustain the business, if we would remain profitable at the end of the year, if your business would even survive this pandemic, as it were. Many of us have pondered on adapting, the products and services that we offer. Innovation and adaptation have always been key principles of business. But COVID has tested this. You must innovate fast. You must adapt fast if you want to stay. If you want to stay in business. If you want your business to keep running. So today, the questions that you would most likely ask would be, how do I sustain my cash flows to keep the business running? How do I adapt, innovate my products, my services to suit the current consumer behavior and changes that we've seen? You know, and internationally, we've seen companies adapt. We've seen big perfume brands start producing hand sanitizers. We've seen clothing brands producing facial masks, facial protective masks. We've even seen automotive.
Okay.
Even seen.
Damola, we lost you for a couple of minutes, so you need to go back to what you were saying a few minutes ago.
Oh, apologies. So I was saying that globally, many businesses have adapted. Some businesses have adapted to the pandemic. You know, we've heard of perfume makers adapting and changing their production lines to produce hand sanitizers. We've heard of clothing lines producing facial protective masks. We've heard of automotive companies producing ventilators. You know, so those are the kind of questions that we've been asked over time. How can I adapt to this? How can I keep my business running? And these are the questions that we would be answering today. We've also been asked, you know, how do I keep my costs low?
Looks like Damola is stuck again. But can you hear me?
Hello, is it better?
Yeah, we can hear you now.
Thank you very much. We've also been asked how businesses can keep their costs low if remote working is here to stay, if they can retain the system even after this pandemic. These are the questions that we would answer today. Without further ado, I would introduce Ogochukwu to present his slides. Ogochukwu.
Thank you very much, Damola, for that introduction. Two things that I'm going to take from there and start off this presentation with is the use of the word test and survival. Essentially, COVID-proofing your business model. The pandemic has come to test it, your existing business model. It has come to test how viable that model is. And it has come to also show whether your business model can survive. Essentially, what we're going to be doing here is very simple. We just want to take businesses through this time. We want businesses to understand what are the things you are doing that can be done better to make sure that you survive. So we're going to start with an introduction just to introduce what business model is, understanding the definition of business model, how to COVID-proof your business model, and surviving the pandemic. Where do you belong? We have categorized businesses into 4, and we want to know where you belong, to know the kind of solutions that will be good for you. If you're here, you're a startup, you're a business owner, I'd like you to pay so much attention, rapt attention, so that you can benefit from this edition of our Emerging Africa Live series. Next slide, please. Essentially, your business model revolves around three major areas. Number 1 is your resources. Number 2, your processes. And number 3 is your profit formula. So when we talk about resources, this pandemic has shown to people that your resources, either at home or either in the office space, how effective can they be? I mean, the pandemic has come and a lot of offices had to shut down. A lot of people had to work from home. Management had to decide who are the people that can work effectively.
You want to take over for a minute? Yeah.
Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you, Damola. Damola, can you hear me?
Yes, I can. Okay,
so I'm gonna, every time Ogochukwu slips off, I'll just take over. So, ladies and gentlemen, so we're talking about your resources. And Ogochukwu, once you can hear me, just go ahead and jump in. We're talking about your resources.
I can hear you now.
Processes and your profit. Okay, come back on.
I can hear you now. Yeah, so talking about your resources, we're talking about your people and how your people are being used effectively to run your business. We're talking about your technology, your designs, your raw materials. For your processes, we're actually talking about your marketing model. What is the process of marketing your goods to your customers? What is the process of distribution? What is the process of your sales? What is the process of your service channels? What are your internal processes in terms of delivering value to your customer? For your profit formula, essentially, every business is here to make profits, but the pandemic has come. Now we will know what are the businesses that can still continue to make profits even in this time of pandemic. So we're looking at your pricing strategy. What are your pricing strategies like in terms of goods that have gotten high in terms of demand and goods that have gone low in terms of demand? So these are the things that we'll look at in the slides. Essentially, you need to understand two things here. For an effective business model, two things must happen. This is the time when the pandemic has come to test your model. But for you to know that your business model is effective, you must realize two things. Number one, what value are you creating? Are you creating any value that is useful to customers? Customer behavior has obviously changed at this time, but what value have you created that is useful to customers? Number two, the value you have created, is it still making money for you? The pandemic has been on for about 3 to 4 months, but what has that value done in terms of generating revenue for you? We'll ask some more questions as we go forward, and we'll take those questions at the Q&A session. Next slide, please. How to CovidProof your business model. The first point we're looking at here is your target market reevaluation. We've broken this down into 4 major points. Number one is the effect of the pandemic on your business. Number two is the market segment analysis. Number three is your future drivers of competitive advantage. Number four is the changes in demand. The first thing we have looked at here is the effect of the pandemic on your business. For any business that must survive this pandemic, the first thing you must sit down to analyze with your team, either as a management level or at a strategy session, is how has the pandemic affected my business? How has it affected my target market? How has it affected my distribution, my marketing? How has it affected my customer service delivery? These are the questions you need to ask. How has it affected the cost of production? These questions, will take some of them at the end of the question Q&A session. But essentially, you must also know market segment analysis is very, very important. Some of the goods that we sell, or some of the goods that you sell, those goods have been targeted to a particular demography. Has the pandemic affected the purchasing power of that demography? What can you do to ensure that people can still afford your goods at this time? What can you do to ensure that you can actually still meet the demands of your target market at this time? I'll take, for instance, a company who sells, let's say a company who sells ice cream, for instance, and a company who sells ice cream knows that I'm targeting this age grade. I'm targeting from age 7 years old to age 40. How has the market affected this target grade? How can I still make sure that I am valuable? That company may just look and say, okay, I will do a promo, and I'll reduce my prices, and I will make sure that people can afford more of my product. So it's just an example, but you need to understand every of this question is particular to the kind of business that you operate. Future drivers of competitive advantage. We talked about survival. How do you want to survive going forward? Very, very key. One very key process to survive is your technological deployment. What kind of technology are you deploying to make sure that you remain competitive at this time? The last part to look at under this target market evaluation is, where is the new demand? Very, very important. Pandemic has changed a lot of things for some businesses. For some businesses, the kind of demand that you get, or the place where you get demand from, the sector where you get demand from might have changed. So I'll give, for instance, logistic companies, for instance. A lot of logistic companies used to service, one parcel delivery from here to here. But when the pandemic came up, quick service restaurants came up and said, you know what, since the government has said you can't come in, we will give you contactless deliveries. And they said to them that a lot of food companies started to sell, quick service restaurants started to sell. But at the end of the day, what happened? There was a need for them to identify that for the logistic companies, where is now my demand coming from? Is it coming from the office? No, the offices have closed. Where should it come from? The people who said they want to take their goods out to meet the customers. That is where my demand is. So we'll take some of all these questions. So start taking down notes of your questions, because some of these questions are particular to the industry that your business belongs in. Next slide, please. digitalize marketing strategy. This is very, in fact, this is actually like a no-brainer for any business. When we talk about digitalizing your marketing strategy, essentially the pandemic made everybody stay home. Stay home order, don't go anywhere, you can't go out. Fine, you can't go out. Were businesses still operating? Yes, a lot of businesses made more money in the pandemic like they've never made before. And what changed is just re-strategizing. What changed again is how they've taken their business from the traditional way of operating to a modern way of adapting to the new normal. Essentially, remote working had to come into place. So the remote workforce and automation, it had to come into place. A lot of businesses started working from home. Many businesses that had stifled their staff to say, oh no, you must come in by 8, you must resume, you must close at social time. They had to adapt to the new normal. The first question you need to ask yourself under this category is, what is the effectiveness of this flexibility of remote working? What has it done for me? From remote working, how can I ensure that my product is still out there? If you're a business that can take your products to social medias, you should understand what type of social media platform will I use? Where will I find my target market? Under what social media platform? If you're going on Twitter to advertise your product, you know that there are certain kind of people you want to meet there. If you're going on Facebook, there are certain kind of people you want to meet there. If you're using your Instagram, the same thing applies. That is essentially understanding the direction of digital marketing. The third point here is change your working model. So if you're working in the office, there's usually a systematic way of working to say, oh, when I do this, I will go and meet this person to review for me, or I will take this document from here to here to sign. No, the pandemic has changed this. But how are you adapting to this pandemic? How are you adapting to this pandemic in terms of your marketing strategy? These are many more we can take later on at the Q&A sessions. I'm just dropping these questions to open up your mind to your particular kind of business so that you can have the right set of questions to ask. The next slide, please. Pricing and sales model. In fact, this is the most important of them all. You are a business person. The major thing about your business is to make profits. If you want to make profits, you must ask yourself the question, what is my pricing strategy like? Pandemic has come, and for some people, pandemic increased the demand of their products. For some people, pandemic reduced the demand on their products. Pricing and sales response is very, very key. How did you respond effectively to the effect of pandemic on your business? So for products that you had that people, okay, for example, the stay-at-home policy, a lot of people rushed to the malls to buy things. And if you noticed, some of the things you were buying, they increased the prices and you had no choice to buy because they were necessities. So for necessities, did you have the opportunity to increase the price so that you could level up for those prices that went down because of the effect of the pandemic? Those are the questions you need to ask. How did you respond effectively in terms of pricing? It's very simple. So some goods had to go high because they were necessary. Some had to go low in demand because they were not necessary. The balancing of that pricing on the high demand and on the low demand effectively keeps you in business, sustains you, and helps you to survive. What are your value drivers? Like I said, it's just creating value that is useful and how that value can turn into profit making for you. So what are the value that you've created? At this point in time, it's obvious customers are focused on what is important to me. I want to save. I want to invest at this time. A lot of people were even investing. I want to change my money to dollars to invest. But in investing, I must still buy necessities. So what are the value? What kind of value did you create for your customer to ensure that they were still buying those necessities? Or you created a value that ensured that you are indispensable. Whether they like it or not, they still have to come to you to buy what they needed to buy. That is in terms of value drivers. Adoption of a digital channel. I mean, it's very simple. We saw that a lot of companies went online, started doing social media drives, social media campaigns to make sure. Obviously, some people had sales personnel. Every company has sales. And we even heard rumors that some companies laid out their sales staff. I mean, this is very simple. If you are going from one place to another to advertise a product, but you can't go to advertise a product anymore, what is the next channel you must use? Everybody is at home and everybody is on their phone. From morning till night, people are checking all sorts of platforms, LinkedIn, social media platforms. That is a good way to start. Take your product on the internet, take your product, your service, no matter the industry that you are, everybody will see it. And these questions should actually recalibrate your mind. Did I do this? Is there time to do this? If I don't do this, how will I survive? Next slide, please. Your operating model. An operating model simply is more like an internal outlook. So for you to get your operating model right, you need to sit down with your management, sit down with your strategist, ask yourself, how can I maximize my employee skills? There are some employees that at this point in time, you must let them go. There are some employees that at this point in time, you must harness their skills, but identifying them is actually really key. So you need to sit down and reevaluate. This is my labor force. This is my workforce. How can I encourage those that I think are useful to me, that can drive this business forward? How can I send them on trainings? This is the time when you need to sit down and actually map out a plan to say, there are a lot of digital training out there. I need to send my staff for digital training so that they can know. At this point in time, I must tell you the truth. Every staff is client facing. When we used to have, before the pre-pandemic, everybody was, oh, I'm front desk, I'm back office, I'm front office. But at this time, it is a good time to make sure that every of your staff is useful in terms of deploying their skill in advertising the company and marketing the company. Your processes, how your processes executed. Remember, this time, a lot of processes have to change, especially payment process. Oh, you raise an invoice, you take it to finance office, finance will stamp on it, you take it to the CEO, CEO will minute on it. All these things cannot happen because a lot of us were home at the time of pandemic. But how did you evolve your process? A lot of fraudulent things were happening at this time. People were hacking into emails. Sit down and ask yourself, did I develop a means to ensure that nobody can hack into my email? Nobody can do any fraudulent thing through, in terms of approving payments. Nobody can forge my signature. What are the measures you put in place to ensure that your processes are watertight? This is all about operating model. Looking for opportunities is very, very simple. You need to sit down, hold a town hall with your staff. Ask people. People have ideas that are sitting with them. Ask your staff, how can we move this company forward? How can we look for opportunities? The pandemic has come, has affected a lot of things. A lot of people, for them, their bottom line are affected. Potential transactions have been affected. What are the opportunities that you can look at? You can look at new spaces of business. You can look at diversifying your business. You can look at taking advantage of new opportunities. But all this will only happen if you can sit down and ask yourself these questions. That how have I looked? How have I searched in terms of expanding the opportunities that are open to me? Next slide, please. I'm actually trying to rush and at the same time make my point. So if you don't get some things clearly, there's a Q&A session. You can write down your questions so that we can take your questions at that point. Finally is business cost reevaluation. At some point in time, I actually felt I should do this first. But when I discussed with Mrs. Stonison, she thought this should be last. And why I actually felt this should come first at some point was because a lot of people, in terms of bottom line, they were losing money. When you're losing money in terms of profits, you actually need to look at how can I reduce my cost. Cost reevaluation is actually very, very important for you at this time, because if you were spending so much money on things that you shouldn't spend money on, you actually need to look at what are the things I'm spending money on. What are the things I can actually avoid spending money on? Are you occupying an office space that is too big, that is too large, that you can easily let go of some parts and hold on to some parts? In terms of cost strategy, am I holding on to some people that are not useful to me because the pandemic has rendered some part of their role redundant? These are the things that you need to look at. Am I looking at moving staff to another role in terms of saving cost of, oh, they are deploying staff in this role and they are not being useful to me. I'm wasting money paying them. I'm paying a salesperson who should be going out there. I'm paying somebody who should be working at the back office. Can I convert that person to back office, save the cost of keeping that person there, and at the end of the day, I'm getting value from bringing that person to a client-facing point of view? So these are the things that you need to look at. In terms of cost evaluation, can I postpone a hiring? I'm supposed to hire somebody at so-so time, at so-so period, but the pandemic has come. Do I really need this person? Can I outsource some of these services I'm doing to make sure that I save cost? Business cost reevaluation doesn't necessarily mean laying off your staff. It can actually mean redeploying people to another role. It can actually mean reducing, outsourcing some of the things that you have been doing yourself. It can actually mean reevaluating to see what are the things that I can let go of in terms of my fixed costs, in terms of my recurrent expenses. Now, the pandemic has made it possible for a lot of people to work from home. You don't get to use your tissues, your utilities, your toiletries. You're saving costs in a lot of things. But at the end of the day, you need to ask yourself, if I'm saving this cost, how much of this cost have I saved? How much of this cost can I continue to save? Don't forget, the two keywords I try to bring out here is tests on your business and survival. We should not look at this pandemic as a short-term thing. Let's look at it as a long-term plan. What are the things I can do to continue to make sure that my cost is low, my cost to revenue ratio remains as low as possible? At this point in time, I'll hand over to the CEO, Mrs. Tony Sonny, to take over from here. Thank you very much, Damola.
Thank you very much, Ogo. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. What really resonated with me was, you know, as your target market's been affected by this pandemic, if your target market has been affected, of course, you need to rethink your business model and also your working model, very key. Thank you very much, Ogochukwu. Thank you very much. Ms. TFS, please, could you take us through this, the second half of the session?
Okay, so thank you, Damola, for continuing to host this. And Ogochukwu, you did a marvelous job. And it was a fantastic ride all the way. I love the passion with which you presented. And ladies and gentlemen, thank you for staying with us up to this stage. It's a real pleasure for me to talk about the next part of this presentation. And I'll start with, where do you belong? Which category of business operator do you belong to? And because how you belong in the post-COVID situation, where your business can be segmented into, will determine what steps you need to take and how we can guide you and support you. So the first slide here says scale up or refinance. And we have essentially divided businesses into two categories. There's a category where we think you should scale up, go for it, give it all you've got. And there is another category where we think you need to look for how to refinance your existing obligations. So who are those in the scale up category? These are businesses that are in sectors that have experienced new and increased demands on account of COVID-19. And we have some clients in those segments. So we have a client in the IT segment that has seen massive demands. They serve about 13 banks in Nigeria. They've seen massive demand from their banks for their help with digital technology, revamp and expansion. So they're seeing a lot of contracts. They're seeing a lot of banks inviting them. And by the way, not just Nigerian banks, but also, you know, they're looking beyond the shores of this country. Now, those kind of clients are looking to expand like yesterday. So if you are in that line, this is the best time for you to seek funding so that you can expand, because that space will be occupied by somebody or the other. So do you want to move into that? We have clients in the health sector who are also seeing the increased demand for good quality health services. And this is a time where they're looking to also scale up. So my question is, if your business is one of the sectors that is growing, like information technology, cybersecurity, which is still information technology, logistic business that Ogochukwu has explained before, healthcare, pharmaceuticals, this is the time to scale up and don't lose the opportunity to scale up. Now, on the other divide is those who need to refinance. So business is slow in your sector. Perhaps you are in the hotel sector. Perhaps you are in the aviation sector. Perhaps you are in the restaurant sector. Perhaps you are in the sports and entertainment sector other than indoor entertainment. This is your cue, because the good news is that the pandemic has come. Some things have changed permanently in terms of buyer behavior and people behavior and demand dynamics. But some things have only changed temporarily. We can't all remain locked at home forever. To be honest with you, our social lives will eventually come back, simply because we're social beings and nobody can stay home forever. Eventually there will be a vaccine, eventually there will be treatments, eventually there will be people who are willing to take the risk because they just need to keep living. So how do you ensure that your business is sustained during this period, to such a time as there is greater demand for your services and goods? One of the ways is to seek to refinance all your existing obligations. So having the right conversations with your debt solution providers, with your contractors, your contractors that you may be owing, or your suppliers that you may be owing. This is an excellent time to get professional help, to engage with them and come up with alternative future cash flows that are believable, which they can then see that, okay, over time, you will be back in the money. The truth is that cash remains the lifeblood of any business. And if you are not able to meet your obligations as I went due, unfortunately, you won't live to survive. So there's a popular adage that says, he that fights and runs away lives to fight another game. This is a time you need to know what are the steps you're doing in terms of refinancing. And how do you refinance your existing obligations? There are three things that I want to talk about very quickly. The first thing you need to do is you are looking for a longer tenor. So who can give me a longer tenor of funding, either by way of equity to replace debt, or by way of pseudo equity, or by way of a longer tenured debt as opposed to a shorter tenured debt. The capital markets in which we operate is a fantastic place to get longer tenured debt, and where we can advise. The second thing you're looking for is, do I need to refinance the currency of my existing obligations? We're all conscious of what has happened with the Naira relative to the hard currencies. And we don't think this is the last of it. We think that there is a clear possibility of further devaluation of the domestic currency. Are you still carrying dollar debt? If you are still carrying dollar debt, you need to restructure to Naira debt. Some of the clients that we advised them to do this even before the pandemic came, because by the end of last year, we already saw, it was clear, the handwriting was on the wall, that there was a likelihood of future devaluation. And some of our clients that we spoke to took the advantage and they refied. I know a particular company that refied all its entire dollar obligations to Naira. And today they're smiling and they're happy. So it is not too late to do this, because we see further devaluation. So the things you want to do, and the third thing, I'll tell you the third thing you want to do. So the first one you want to do is to elongate the tenor of your existing obligations. The second one is to change the currency of your existing obligations. The third one is to reduce the pricing of your existing obligation. You are aware that COVID-19 has brought a reduction, and government itself, even for those who have taken the intervention loans and facilities, the government has reduced all obligations, to about half of the former costs, from 9% to 5% thereabouts. So this is a time to reprice your existing obligations. Next slide, please. Next slide, please, Damola. So restructure or reposition. So the first was scale up or refinance. The second one is restructure or reposition. These are alternatives that will suit your business depending on what your business model is like. Remember, we're talking about COVID-proofing your business model. So there are sectors where the market dynamics may favor. Sorry, we need to go back here. There are sectors where the market dynamics may favor a possible external or internal restructuring, such as mergers and acquisition. We are also working with a couple of clients in this space who are recognizing that because of the increased opportunities, for example, if you are in indoor entertainment, your business is not shutting down. Your business is expanding like wildfire. If you are in indoor entertainment and your business is expanding, you have a product that is attractive, and that product is only being sold in Nigeria, and you are deploying this business through a digital model. Wow. There's no better time to move to other African countries. There's no better time to look at the business as a global business. If you're looking at the business as a global business, the next question you're going to ask yourself, how can I access a depth of capital beyond what I have right now? How can I expand on long-term capital that will not, will be capital that is patient, while I expand? This will be a fantastic time to look at the possibility of merging with a larger global entity, the possibility of allowing a global entity to acquire significant stake in your business if it can give you access to larger markets. This is the time for those kind of businesses to think expansively. So, and by the way, restructure also means you can also target companies that you can acquire. So companies that are distressed in your space could be potential acquisition targets for you. Companies that are running out of cash could be potential, but who are basically profitable, could be potential acquisition targets for you. This is not the time to close shop as long as you are in that segment. Those segments like I've talked about, like indoor entertainment, like logistics, like segments like like health sector and ICT. So some serious corporate failures or corporate opportunities may prompt businesses to seek restructuring to improve their competitiveness whilst broadening its business coverage. External restructure will be useful to acquire expensive technological assets, increase market share and growth, diversify your risk, and survive the regulatory requirements. We anticipate, for example, that there may be regulatory induced, restructuring, for example, in the banking and finance sector. Now, what else do you need to do? Alternatively, if you're not restructuring, can you reposition your business? How do you reposition your business? These are sectors that are comprised of companies who are facing a slow recovery, whilst also having to deal with fundamental changes in modes of business and customer behavior. Surviving and thriving will require a complete re-strategizing of your short, medium, and long-term plans. Companies in this category will require professional advisors to develop a strategic plan to reposition the business. So you are repositioning your business to pivot, for example, to other lines of business that are more. One of the things that you also want to do is, going forward, have a diversified business model. One of the greatest lessons of COVID-19 is diversification. When your business is sufficiently diversified, it will not be shrinking, but some aspects will be growing, aspects that are growing on top of it. Looks like my internet is a little unstable.
Yeah, we lost you for a while, but you are back now. We can hear you.
To everybody for that. Next slide, please. I'll make this quick so we can go to the Q&A, because I suspect that for people, it's the opportunity to answer the financial advisory services to companies on optimum fundraising structure, either by way of debt, equity, or mixed, for mergers and acquisition, for example, that we've talked about. Financial planning services to aid your business continuity and expansion opportunities. We help with capital raising, so we help you to access funding, both equity and debt funding, and especially long-term patient funding that you need at this time. We help you to secure investors, fund providers' commitment, and ensuring seamless financial close. We provide financial modeling services. One of the things you need to do, we've talked about, is rebuild your business models. And by the way, the impact of COVID-19 on your financial model cannot be underestimated. And one of the things you need to be able to demonstrate to your investors right now is that even in a post-COVID-19 scenario, your numbers, you have run them again, it's been run professionally by an independent entity, and the numbers work, the new numbers work. So business plan and marketing documents, we support you with this, in one of our subsidiaries, and of course, restructuring, mergers and acquisition, corporate reorganization, and project finance are some of the solutions that we have for you. Next slide, which I think should be the last. So, it's a real pleasure to be here. I thank you for the opportunity to present. I would like to believe that this has been helpful. And on this note, I want to hand over to our host, Damola, to take us through the Q&A. Thank you, Damola.
Thank you very much, TFS. Thank you very much. The key takeaways there for me were refinancing and restructuring your debts. And sometimes you might need to restructure your company entirely. M&A opportunities are out there and all of that. You must consider them. So on this note, we would go straight to the question and answer session. Sorry, TFS, I will start with this question and then go through the questions sent by the attendees.
Okay.
So thank you very much, ma'am. You rightly said cash is the lifeblood of any business. I reckon that many of our attendees here today are very concerned about cash flows. Are there quick ways for businesses and business owners to, ease cash flow issues during this pandemic? Very quick ways, I know you touched on it, but you could also talk more on it. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Damola. Excellent question. Now, if you're a business owner, you first want to ask yourself, which of my expenses are essential and which expenses are non-essential? And I like to use personal examples. So in our head office, we occupy 2 buildings. And today, even as I speak today, we are still working 100% from home, and we only go into the office if we need to go. So what does that mean? It means that a lot of the money that we're spending on rent and we're spending on utilities is actually money that we don't need to spend. So one of the things we've done is to give up about half of our office space effective from August this year. So you need to look at it pragmatically. Do you even need a physical office at all? You'll be amazed that some businesses can go on without an office at all. You can have a virtual office and that is it. Second thing you want to look at is also with respect to your workforce. And you want to look at, are there flexible ways? Is there a job sharing that I can do, for example? Can two people share a job such that my cost is reduced rather than laying people off? I know an international company that actually had an arrangement in which everybody took a mandatory 1 month of unpaid leave every year. And that meant everybody all the way to the CEO. They managed to save about $50 million. It's a global business. And everybody felt good because nobody was fired, and yet everybody paid a bit of the sacrifice. So those are some interesting things you can do to ease your cash flows. And of course, some of them is the restructuring of your existing financing obligations, looking for long-term equity funding, and also having conversations with them. By the way, you can change your pricing model, and you can also change. So get some cash out of businesses that are in higher demand. You can also change your payment model. So there's some clients that will still be happy to pay you upfront. So if you can do that, fine. So those are some of the things that you can do. And also with suppliers, there's some deep pocket suppliers that you have that will be willing to wait a little longer for payments for just, some of them are afraid of losing you completely. So they'll be willing to listen to you and extend the tenor for you to pay. Thank you, Damola.
Thank you very much, TFS. Thank you very much. Very exciting. I have a question from an anonymous attendee. Ogochukwu, please, you take this. The attendee has asked, repositioning business requires research and feasibility study. Does your business support in this regard?
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely, we do. We've had to cost to serve a couple of clients where we've had to prepare a five-year strategic plan for them, essentially to rebrand their business. So the 5-year strategy will look at short-term plans to quicken and revive the business. It will look at medium-term plans, and it will even look at long-term plans. For a company, we had to do up to a 10-year plan. So it is very, very doable, and that is one of our core areas, as earlier mentioned.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Ogochukwu. Thank you very much, Ogochukwu. The next question, I agree that we've touched a bit on this, but just as TFS shone a bit more light in the first question, I reckon that this might also happen here. So, as we all know, every business must constantly innovate and anticipate trends as well as challenges to navigate in the murky waters of business. What tips can you give businesses and business owners that are still trying to adapt to the disruption and innovate for now as well as the future? Not just for now, but also for the future. Mrs. TFS, please, can you take that?
So one of the first things that I can say is that every business owner needs to recognize that all businesses are now technology driven. All types of businesses in the new world are technology driven. And so the appropriateness, the superiority of your technology will make a big distinction between you and your competitors. The second thing you need to look at is, when I say technology, I mean digital technology driven. And the third thing that I will say to any business owner is that you need to understand that what we're facing with COVID-19 is not a 100-meter dash. It's a mile run. It's a long-term thing. And when I say long-term, the effects could go for the next 2 to 3 years. So every strategy that you're building cannot be strategy that will keep you in business for 6 months. It's strategies that must keep you in business afloat for the next at least 24 months, even if buyer behavior does not change, especially in industries like aviation and hospitality. Hospitality will gradually come back, but business travel, for example, and business-driven, hospitality demands may, remain flaky for a little while more to come. Thank you.
Thank you very much, TFS. Thank you once again. There's a question from Lucien Molina. Ogochukwu, please, would you take this? Do you have any particular advice for small and medium-sized enterprises to access equity or debt finance in this difficult environment?
Yes, essentially, one of the categories that we had earlier highlighted is scale up. So for small businesses, I mean, to be honest, even the merger and acquisition that we speak of, small companies can even merge. There are different types of mergers. There are mergers for small companies. There are mergers for big companies. So my advice for startup, for businesses is, number one, you need to actually sit down and look at, has my demand increased? Will there be a need to scale up? If there will be a need to scale up, what kind of capital am I looking at? Am I looking at a patient capital that will help me grow my business in this demand? Am I looking for an immediate capital that I can take in a higher pricing at this time and scale up my business? If I take in that pricing, how will that pricing affect my profitability? At Emerging Africa, we've created solutions for businesses like this. We have an SME desk. Essentially, the SME desk serves SME. And through that SME desk, we've been able to structure products that can help SMEs to access funding. We have strategic relationship with DFIs and other organizations that we can handhold startup companies and other existing small businesses to access money. When I mean handholding, what do? We help them to become bankable. Some of all the challenges they have with raising funding is that they don't have the right documentation. They don't have marketing documentation. And Imagine Africa, our SME desk will help you to prepare necessary marketing documentation, make sure that you are bankable, and hold you to access funding, cheap funding, long-term funding, and all sorts of funding. But the truth of the matter is that before we do this, we will evaluate your business. We will advise you, what kind of capital do you need? What kind of capital do you need to access? Where can you access that capital? Even in Emerging Africa, we actually have structured debt notes wherein we actually deploy capital for some companies based on qualified meeting some eligible criteria. We have other means of raising equity. We have a pool of investors where we can actually access angel investors, institutional investors that can deploy equity into their business. Essentially, the way to go is approaching the SME desk and asking for more details.
Thank you very much, Ogochukwu, for doing justice to that. I think it was very detailed. So the next question, TFS, we have a question from, apologies, we have a question from Adai Jara. TFS, in your view, do you think it's a good idea for business owners to test out new ideas they might have been harboring before the pandemic, or should survival just be the main focus for now?
Well, I have always believed that the best line of defense is offense. Every time is a good time to try out new ideas, especially where the new ideas are ideas in a space, a sector that we can see is growing. So if this is a sector that is, I call some of them counter-cyclical, so the whole market is going down, but these ones are going up, there's no better time than now than to actually try those ideas. If it's in a sector that is generally defensive, such as like a food supply, the entire food value chain, again, this is a fantastic idea to test new ideas. The important thing is that in testing these new ideas, you're not going into huge capital intensive commitments until you see that this can work. But you can have pilots, deploy pilot schemes with a modest capital that you can control and you can cap in case the idea does not pan out. But you must continue to test ideas and learn to fail fast and then reinvent yourself. Innovation is one of the things that will get all of us out of this mess, so to speak.
Thank you very much. The best form of defense is attack. Thank you very much, ma'am. TFS, sorry, just hold on a bit. There was a particular question for you because the person addressed it to you. I said, dear TFS, I run a management training school. My business has taken a hit. Clients have requested that we pivot to a fully online model. This means we have to charge only about 10 to 30% of what we previously charged. We have looked at the possibility of using a learning management system model, but this has its own challenges too, like intellectual property theft, highly reduced charges, intense competition from other freelance tutors on YouTube and other LMS sites. What do you advise?
Fantastic. I think it's a great question. I can't tackle it completely here, but what I can tell you is, first of all, new markets, secondly, new products. Your existing market is shrinking. Your existing products lines are shrinking, but you can, for example, the same new products, online training you are deploying, you are no longer limited by geographical barriers. So whatever online training you are deploying for your Nigerian clients, you could be deploying for every 54 countries in Africa, because it's exactly the same tools, it's exactly the same way you are going to approach it, and physical presence is no longer necessary. Partnering, for example, also with internationals in your space. You mentioned something about intellectual property. Why do you want to reinvent the wheel? Everybody's looking for new markets. So again, partnering with the international providers who already have this learning content, for you to deploy this content within Africa, for example, is also one of the things you want to do. So we're learning to do things in a different way, but it's not the end of the world.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, CFS. The next question, Ogochukwu. Many have said that businesses would revert to the pre-COVID-19 status quo once the pandemic is over. Do you believe that remote working is here to stay? I think you believe so. And if you do believe so, how can brick and mortar businesses fully or partly adopt the remote working model?
How can what? I didn't get the last part.
How can traditional brick or mortar businesses, fully or partly adopt the remote working model?
Okay, thank you very much. So, like you rightly said, I actually believe that remote working is here to stay, because for 1-2 months it was tested, and the companies who were proactive enough actually saw the reward of it. Essentially, I think that for companies that have traditional ways of, I'll give an instance now. For instance, let's say a customer. Okay, I know a business that they have a customer service department. They have phones, and everybody has to come into a large room, receive calls, make calls. And I was talking to that person, and he said, when the pandemic happened, everybody had to stay at home. They were all working from home. The calls that they all came into a large floor office to take, they were taking those calls from home and they were attending to customers. So it may cost a little more in terms of equipping people to work from home, but in the long run, you will be saving a lot of costs. Like TFS had said, you're living in an office space and you're saving money from paying rent. By the end of the day, you're seeing that you have equipped the staff with laptop, you have equipped him with an internet service, you have equipped him with the things that he needs to work from home, and he's able to do that effectively from home. So I think that it's here to stay. And I think that what those companies need to do is, number one, to actually equip the staff with relevant tools that they need to do it, evaluate the effectiveness of doing it from home, and thirdly, they can actually try it out for a couple of months, and if they see that it's working fine, and if it's not working fine, they can actually fine-tune. Testing and trying different models can actually help those businesses to thrive in the remote working space.
I want to jump in here and say that one of the problems we've had is everybody has been inventing their own customer service team, call centers, like you said, a room full of people. But you know that in a lot of the developed world, call centers are outsourced and simply centralized. You can have Anybody. Your calls could be being picked in India. And by the way, those are some of the things that we should do in Nigeria and offer to the whole world at a time like this. So outsource your call centers and save massive costs of reinventing, all these what do they call it now? Paraphernalia of equipment and resources that everybody is duplicating. So shared services will be a very important aspect of the solutions that we all need to look at this time. Shared back office services, shared backbones, shared platforms, shared call centers. Thank you.
Thank you very much, CFS. Thank you very much. I completely agree with shared services. Call center services abroad. You see where a company in the US, their call center services is being manhandled in Pakistan or India, and Nigeria, we do have cheap labor. Let's face it. These are opportunities that people can tap into. These are very key opportunities that people can tap into. I also do agree with the management training school. We shouldn't just look at the downside of charging less. You think about the volumes you can do when you're online. You can train someone in the US, in the UK, in Canada, wherever you are, wherever they are rather. By the way, there's one more question, Mrs. TFS. I would really appreciate if you could do justice to this. In this present, is from Christiana Akindele. In this present time, some businesses have been materially disrupted due to the global supply chain responses to COVID-19 in the form of closed borders and travel bans. How can businesses that depend on this look forward?
Well, excellent question, Christiana. And this is the time for backward integration. This is the time for looking at how going forward you can control your own supply chain so that you won't face this again. This is the time to look for domestic suppliers of the same. This is the time to take advantage of some of the incentives that government is putting forward so that we can have some of this import substitution. This is a time for you to partner with providers in maybe less stable markets for you to become their domestic assemblage or their domestic place. By the way, Damola has said that labor is cheap. Damola has said, for example, that I'm aware, for example, that there are operators or providers or builders, manufacturers of trucks and some of these heavy equipment that are facing significant regulatory challenges in Europe and other places, who are actually looking for some of our free trade zones as places where they can begin to manufacture this equipment. And this is a time, an opportunity for Africa to also open up itself as being an integral part of these supply chains that, that have been disrupted across the world. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ma. We have just 2 minutes. I will crave the indulgence of my speakers to just give final words in 30 seconds. Ogochukwu, you may go ahead.
Okay, thank you very much once again for this great opportunity. And we've had a lot to say, but we've had to compress everything into an hour. It's very easy to know more. You can reach us on all our social media platforms. You can reach out to us. And we will take this further. What we've tried to do here is just to recalibrate your mind. It's actually to make you think further, to think deeper. How can I do this better? If you're here, even if it's a one-man business, it's a one-man architectural firm, it's a one-man law firm, there's actually a lot that you can do to COVID-proof your business at this time. If it's a business that has suffered a serious blow in terms of how you produce, how you access your clients, we can actually help you. We have solutions that can help you. So I would like to encourage everyone who has participated, if you know somebody or you actually operate a business, you can actually do a simple introduction just to help that person. There are a lot of clients who have passed through us and they are very excited to have done that. They've taken proactive decisions. And this is not just about now. Pandemic has been here for a while now, but we're actually looking at long term. How can we help you in long term to save you from situations that may become worse for your business? So thank you very much for this great opportunity. I look forward to hearing from you.
Thank you very much. The lawyer and you had to jump out. 2 minutes. Ms. TFS, please.
Okay. So what I would say to you is this. One of the things I have discovered is that a business is essentially a vehicle. A business is essentially a receptacle. A business is essentially a platform. You are not hog-tied to any particular product or any particular business line. And in every situation, it's the early adapters that survive. I understand that the human species, for example, has survived because we have learned to adapt. Only the paranoid survive. If you stay stuck to your existing product lines, to your existing business model, if you say stuck to the way you have done business forever, you may just be on your way out of your business. But once you understand that, look, this entity is a receptacle, it's a vehicle, it's a platform. It doesn't matter that it used to be a platform for hotel services. Tomorrow, it's going to be a platform for laundry and takeaway. Whatever it is, be ready to pivot to whatever is selling. Follow the money, go to where the fish is biting, and you will still have a business at the end of COVID-19. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, TFS. Thank you very much, Ogochukwu. Follow the money. That's why I have many takeaways. I've mentioned them, but the main one for me is follow the money. Thank you very much. On this note, we come to the close of the second edition of the Emerging Africa Capital Live Chat series. I thank you, my panelists, for the enlightening session and the wonderful insights. Thank you so much. I thank you, the attendees, for the questions. I'm making the session very interactive, highly interactive. Thank you very much. I also thank the entire staff of the Emerging Africa Capital Group for putting this all together behind the scenes. On this note, I thank you, everyone, and do have a good rest of the day. Thank you, CFS. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Bye-bye. Well done, Damola.
Thank you very much.